we have to get some other news in today because there's a lot going on in the world and because it's just important. It's just important not to spend all day, every minute on this. You know, there's only so much the human spirit can take. So we're going to get a few other segments in today, including this one. And that is the official State Department review on the circumstances surrounding that September 11th terrorist attack on our consulate in Benghazi, Libya. It's been completed, and it has been delivered now to Secretary Clinton. You remember she was saying in the early days, we're going to wait for the review. We're going to wait for the review. Well, it's done. But Mrs. Clinton will not be presenting this review to Congress as she was planning to do during the hearings this week. They say it's on doctor's orders because she suffered a concussion some point last week after fainting. She had reportedly had the flu. Now, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairwoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen has made it clear she still very much wants Secretary Clinton to testify at some point. She expects her to show up and do so. And a Pentagon spokesperson today saying that Secretary Clinton is willing to work with the committees on that. But what does that mean? And where does this stand? Monica Crowley is a syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor, and we appreciate you being here.
Of course. Hi, Megan.
So, I mean, listen, just to delve into politics seems like an escape from this whole, story right now. But what's really going on? I mean, she fainted sometime last week and can't show up this Thursday for a previously scheduled testimony. I mean, there was speculation, I wanted the viewers to know, about whether she'd really go. Right? They were speculating, is she really going to show up and do it?
Even before she had this fall and this concussion.
And right? I'm not suggesting she didn't get a concussion, but there is a legitimate question about, do we believe this is an excuse and that she really will show up to testify?
Well, the reason we're even asking these questions about this virus with apparently impeccable timing is because from the very beginning, from September 11th, the day of this attack in Benghazi, that did result in the deaths of 4 American citizens, that we haven't been able to get a straight story or, frankly, anybody from this administration on the record with a clear explanation, not just for those 4 families, but for the American people.
Well, she is going to send some lieutenants, though. It's not like all testimony's been withdrawn and we're not going to get somebody knowledgeable, we presume, before Capitol Hill. But it's not the Secretary of State. And she said, the buck stops with me. So, these lawmakers want to hear from her, including Senator Kerry. I mean, and now he is the one who reportedly said to her, don't come, you don't feel well. But he wants to hear from her as well over on the Senate side.
And she can still be called. So even after she steps down, presumably, and Senator Kerry takes her position, she can still be called before the Congress, and she likely still will. But the problem is that this kind of, the fact that here we are almost 3 months after the September 11th attacks in Benghazi, we're still awaiting answers. We still can't get a straight story from this administration. And those who are in the upper levels of authority here, who oversaw this, or at least have responsibility for it, including the Secretary of State, none of them have put themselves in a position before Congress, before the media, before the American people to answer for this, is what I think drives a lot of the frustration on Capitol Hill and I think in the public.
How does it work for her if just her top lieutenants testify and she never does? I mean, this Congress is ending at the end of this year. We'll start a new one and presumably, well, not presumably, she can, we're told, be called before the new Congress and may, even though she'll be out of the job because she's leaving her position as Secretary of State. And we saw that with what's his name? General
Petraeus.
Thank you for General Petraeus. He left his post and he went back to testify. How likely is it that she will, and how much, if any, do you think this has to do, this whole thing, with Hillary 2016?
Well, I think a lot of it. Remember, so much of this happened on her watch, and there are a lot of things, presumably, in this report, this inspector's review report coming out today that will be transferred over to Congress. Maybe even members of Congress have it now to look at, that will contain some mighty embarrassing things for her and for her department. Understandable, she doesn't want to have to answer for it, but she is in the position of authority where the buck really does stop. Now, there are some points that maybe she ends up looking vindicated or actually looking okay in all of this. Remember, in the months leading up to the September 11th attacks, Megan, she and her department, the State Department, actually requested on multiple occasions additional security for Benghazi. They were turned down. Who turned her down? Who turned down the State Department to give Ambassador Stevens and those other Americans added security? Was it the White House? Well, there may be a whole array of things that she might not want to address. Again, that's understandable, but she's the one ultimately responsible, and she does have to answer for this at some point.
That the Republicans still control the House and will in January as well. It's been a bipartisan push in the Senate to get answers on this. So even though the Democrats control that chamber, they've wanted answers from Secretary Clinton now, and they'll presumably continue to want them after the new year. Any chance, you think, that she doesn't wind up speaking to either body?
I don't think so. I think she can't avoid this for much longer. I think all of this is sort of the delay in the report until today, right before the Christmas holidays. Then she has a stomach virus and a concussion, and now it's delayed even further. I think part of the strategy, Megyn, is, if there is a strategy here, is to run out the political clock so that maybe the American people lose interest in this, which they should not. We have 4 dead Americans here and we need answers about. But also leading into a new administration, President Obama's second term, a whole new cast of characters. You mentioned Senator Kerry, who is going to succeed her in this job. It's probably in his interest to kind of sweep this aside so he can begin his tenure anew. All of this understandable from a political standpoint, but remember, again, we have 4 dead Americans. Families need answers. The American people need answers. And in terms of our national security, we need to know what went down and why.
Yeah, we have other ambassadors out there that we need
Correct.
to worry about and make sure that they're safe as well. Monica Crowley, thank you, ma'am.
Always a pleasure.
Great to see you.